And you're not wearing New Balance today.
The car is all composite on the outside and then aluminum, the famous wood floorboards. I ripped out the GM ABS and replaced it with a BMW. Obviously wish it was faster. The only issue I have, complaint with the car, frankly, is just the brakes. The sort of key puzzle to it, and this is technical, borderline too nerdy. I think every car has its, skeleton in the closet. Ooh, the boogeyman's gonna come get you. Amazon, like $20 fans on it,
yes.
Running on a temp switch. So this is my favorite part of this whole build. It's the front end.
Yeah.
And then when I went to put them on the car, I realized that I had bent these tabs backwards. So I had to cut them off.
I guess the ultimate question is 997 GT3 versus Corvette Z06. What's going on, guys? Today I'm here with Dan. It's a wicked car, and you're not wearing New Balance today.
No New Balance, no cutoff shorts. My shirt is not tucked in. Still have a Corvette.
It is a beautiful car.
Thank you.
So let's begin with how you got into driving and eventually tracking.
I started tracking when I was 16. Always wanted to do it. Soon as I think 16, could have been 18, but as soon as I had a car and could sneak out of the house, went to the track, did my first track event at Rebling Road in Atlanta. Grew up in DC, so drove down there, came up with some excuse and was hooked then. And then did it with some frequency until eventually I kind of got out of the car thing for 10 years, moved to New York, and then moved back here 8 years ago and got right back into it.
What cars did you start with?
First, legit car was an Audi A4, and then went into Subarus, STIs, Evos, had an S2000 for a little bit. I think that's most of the track cars. And then quit cold turkey, like I said, and then when I came back, I had a GT3 for a bit, and then sold that and have had this for three years now, I think.
So it's a 997 GT3.
Yep.
To a Corvette C6 Z06.
Yeah.
As far as tracking in California, when did you start?
First one would have been like 2002, and that was in a WRX. Probably Streets, I think, was the first, and did that complex for a fair bit, and then have always run it. Buttonwillow, love that track. Run Laguna quite a bit too. I actually think that's it in California.
Okay.
So I haven't done like Thunder Hill yet or Chuckwalla.
Well, let's get into the car. What year is it?
It's a 2008. Z06. Found this thing in Lancaster on Craigslist. It was completely stock except for some really bad tint, and it was slammed. Drove it home over the Angeles Crest, which was a lot of fun. I had never driven one of these, so I didn't even know what to expect. And then basically as soon as I got it home, took it most of the way down, did the motor, did about half of what's on the car now, drove it like that for a bit, and then made it really just a track focused thing about a year and a half or so ago. I'd have been tweaking that since.
Yeah, and now you're at 149 with this thing, huh?
48.
48.
Yeah, 48 too, almost a 47.
Blazing fast.
It moves. It's good. This is now almost 10 seconds faster than my GT3 was, but it does have more power and more aero and more tires. But it's good. I wanted to get into the 40s with this level of modification, which I think is still relatively basic. Going to tweak a few more things and then probably go off the deep end and see how deep into the 40s I can get.
Okay.
We'll start with the aero because you can see it.
Okay.
This is a homemade splitter. It's made out of birch. It's what they use for music boxes and things like that. It's lightweight. This has been on here for years. You're actually right on the spot where I ran into my trailer. So it's super rigid, doesn't weigh anything, has held up really well. And then behind the bumper, you can't see it, but I can pull that off later. There's a whole bunch of work with cooling and to drive the air out of the top of the hood instead of under the car.
Okay.
And then it's got some end plates on it, which may or may not do anything. And then in the back, it's got the big ol' honkin' carbon 9 lives wing. This has worked really well. The balance of the car is good. It's got great front end grip. It is much more neutral than I've ever been able to have it before. And it rips. This wing is pretty ridiculous though. It's giant. And I hit my head on it and my back on it constantly. This huge end plates.
All right. Continuing on, I guess that's all factory, right?
No, this is a really inexpensive ZR1 style side skirts.
I see.
These are like it's like $100 for the front lip and this, and the front lip is actually on the car between the splitter and the bumper, and then there used to be a piece back here. And this is like super high quality stuff. It's rattle canned. It's held up for years. I think it looks cool, but yeah, it's nothing special.
That's not factory though, right? It's a factory style, but not a factory.
This is that same kind of eBay. I forget who the manufacturer is. Kit, but it's all injection molded. It fits well. I've got some tape on it to cover up the brake ducts because I'm not using them. But that's an important part to get the seal on the splitter.
Right.
And then this is some like McMaster car sealer that just, tightens it all up. Vents on the hood. While I can't prove it, at least in concept, the idea is that the air comes through the radiator now and then comes out the top rather than coming under the bottom. And these are just cut into the stock hood.
Yeah.
And they look cool.
On a Z06 is a carbon, right?
No, there is a carbon one. This is just fiberglass. The car is all composite on the outside and then aluminum, the famous wood floorboards. But I think carbon, maybe the fenders, that might be it. I think the rest is just fiberglass. And then this is a plastic ABS.
You want to talk about the chassis parts?
Yeah, sure. All right, so chassis-wise, it's JRZ RS Pro 3-ways, and with the remote canisters, there's 2 up here, obviously, 2 in the back. I've changed the rear springs since I put the rear wing on, so it's a 750 front spring, which is what they came with, and an 800 rear instead of a 600 rear. And that's balanced the car out nicely, and just like Novak.
K all day.
Frank from JRZ is the man and helped me get this all set up. Can't say I know exactly what everything does, but it's been perfect. I actually set it now over a year ago. Don't really mess with it. Car feels great, absorbs bumps great. Can really cut bus stop and it's fine. So that's the shocks. It's got a really fat front sway bar on it to take out some of the oversteer. It's got a stock rear sway bar. I have AMT spherical bearings in the A-arms. Really nice kit, takes all the slop out. I've got their alignment parts too, so I can get the right camber, etc. Aligned it all here with strings, which is a real pain in the ass, but gets a good result. What else is on the suspension?
You just mentioned the arms, right?
Yeah, they're factory arms, but they take out the rubber bushings and then machine in spherical bearings. And so you have to actually take the arms off, send them over to Market AMT. And it's great. I never drove the car without them. The suspension has just been really consistent. The alignment never moves, which is great. There's just no rubber really anywhere except for the sway bar bushings. Okay. But at this point, it's all spherical.
Yeah. And on the Corvettes, everything is aluminum, so you don't really need aftermarket stuff, right?
It's a really nice suspension. So it's twin A-arms, front and rear. Originally, the car has this weird transverse spring, a leaf spring that runs across. Those are off. It's now a proper coilover with a spring on it. But yeah, it's a good suspension. I think the geometry is pretty good. I've got in a box somewhere replacement hub upright, make the geometry a little better and let me lower it. The car's actually as low as I can get it to handle properly right now. It's still quite high. So I want to drop that down, but they're not on the car yet. Yeah, it doesn't take much to get this thing to handle. It's got very big tires on it too. I've got a couple different sets, but these are 305 in the front, 325 in the rear. I put a 315 up in the front without any issue. And that's amazing, especially coming from the GT3 where it's very hard to get a wide tire in the front. And that works well. These are Goodyear Supercar 3Rs.
Yeah.
And this is what I've run the fastest laps on so far. Haven't put a full slick on yet, although I do have some hiding in the back there. So that'll be next-ish.
Do you know the specs on the wheels?
It's a 19 by 11 front, 19 by 12 and a half rear. These are the cast ones. I bought these kind of quick. I was chasing an issue, which I can get into later. So they're quite heavy. They fit okay. I think eventually I'll move off 19s and go to 18s. And I've got some lighter wheels that just have junk tires on it, but there's a lot of weight right now in the wheels. And that's not to say that there's anything wrong with these, but at this price point, I think these were like $2,000 for the set. They're gonna be heavy.
All right. What about the brakes?
The brakes are AP Racing from Essex Parts in North Carolina. Jeff is the man. I've known him forever. And this is a really nice kit for the car. So it's a 6-piston front, 4-piston rear. These are the endurance version. So they have a 25 mil thick pad on it. So you never have to change pads on the car. I ran three years and I just changed the pads for the first time now. Big improvement over the factory in serviceability. There's this bizarre 6-pad nightmare for the front. Takes a lot of weight out. But I will say the braking system on this car is definitely the weak point. And it's not the AP Racing stuff. It's the factory GM body control and ABS is a complete nightmare. I mentioned before, I was chasing a problem. The reason I have these Apex wheels is when I originally built the car, I was unaware that if you didn't maintain the right front to rear ratio, the traction control, even if it's off, would completely freak out. And I wasted 2 or 3 track events at Buttonwillow with like wild oversteer. It would snap on me when I would brake. Couldn't figure out what was going on with the car. And then finally figured out that you have to have it's like a 2 to 4% higher rolling diameter in the back than the front. So bought these tires, bought these wheels, and that got it fixed. But that's just an example of it is so temperamental. My rear pads wear way faster than my front, which doesn't make any sense. Even with it's as disabled as I can disable it. And so what I finally did, and I just got this in, I haven't tested it yet, is I ripped out the GM ABS and replaced it with a BMW system out of a 2010's 335i. This is a Teves MK60 E5. And so you can run it, I'd like to say it looks kind of stockish in there, but it's a BMW part. You can run it standalone. So at this point, the car has no control whatsoever over ABS, but there is fully functional ABS with full diagnostics, all the pressure sensors and everything can be read. And my hope is that this fixes what I've been chasing in terms of braking. If you watch any of the videos that I post, you can see the G's coming into corners like into turn 2 or coming into Sunset at Buttonwillow. And this car barely has any braking force. So even with these massive tires, massive calipers, aggressive brakes, it doesn't matter how hard I push the pedal, it's always limiting how hard it will stop. And sometimes it goes into, I think, what's called ice mode, where like basically there's just no brake. And so my hope is that this just fixes that. And I think that would really help the lap times and consistency of the car. Because otherwise with the current setup, I obviously wish it was faster. The only issue I have, complaint with the car, frankly, is just the brakes. The braking performance is crap.
What wiring is required to do one of those?
I mean, what's cool about it is the ABS pump I bought on eBay. It was like 45 bucks. There's certainly a few folks that have done this on Corvettes. I don't think it's particularly popular yet, but this is a common upgrade that like the E46 guys do, or E30s, or just basically earlier BMWs. And in so doing, folks figured out that it's happy to work without being fully connected to a BMW CAN bus. And that's kind of like the key piece. From a wiring perspective, I mean, got a table full of stuff. It was pretty involved. I had to build a new harness for it. I bench tested it. Because it's standalone, you can actually test it on the bench and make sure it works. It has its own diagnostic port right up here.
Nice.
So this was just all set up on a bench and I could make sure the pump was working properly. Got my hands on some wiring diagrams, figured out how the Corvette is wired, and then the sort of key puzzle to it, and this is technical, borderline too nerdy. The BMW requires a very specific type of wheel speed sensor called an active sensor. The later Corvettes, 09 plus, have that. So like a ZR1 or a 2010, but this does not. Managed to find a Facebook group. There's a company called Happy Cactus that makes an adapter that's buried down here somewhere that will convert the passive wheel speed sensors into an active signal. And so I didn't have to go through this nightmare in changing splines and axles and wheel hubs and everything else. It made the wiring a little more complex, but like that was the piece that made this all happen. So I can't imagine how many hours I have into this. Probably 50 hours of work, which is, maybe me being a novice, but I also had to replumb the entire car. So every hard line is new. You probably didn't have to do that, but
Might as well.
Might as well. Yeah. And I'll find out in a couple weeks if it works.
All right.
I can't really drive it on the street. We're in Santa Monica right now, so hopefully I don't pull it off the trailer and then pull it right back on.
It's interesting how people like make stuff like that, Traction control sensor you talked about.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can find if you sleuth around. The stock harness ends here, and then this is my handiwork, as clean as I can make it. And the dashboard is like a Christmas tree. It's just, the light is on, and the next stage, once I kind of get this tested out, I'll fully rip out all the electronics and go to standalone, because this still runs a stock ECU, stock body control, now very neutered, and of course the BMW ABS.
Since we have the engine open, let's go through the engine.
So basic bolt-ons on the engine. It's got a set of CNC'd heads on it. It's the original heads that came on the car. A place called AHP in South Bay did it. So they're all CNC'd, ported, upgraded valve guides. Theoretically is an issue with these cars. I don't know if it's a rumor or not, but felt like I'd just take care of it. This is a pretty mild cam in it. I want to put something a bit more aggressive. And then the bottom end is stock, except for some modifications to the oiling. So this is a dry sump car from the factory, which is cool. Baffling has been upgraded. I increased the size of the oil tank by a couple liters. It's got a completely different cooling system, but we'll get to that later. And then this has 2-inch headers on it. Pretty cool. They barely fit, but they got in there. An intake. It's tuned, and it runs, I only run 91 octane in this as just a point of pride. It does 560 to the wheels, and like 520-ish torque, something like that. I don't exactly recall. It has a 500 RPM red line, but I generally shift at about 7. Power falls off pretty quick because of that cam. And so later my plan is to put a bigger cam in it, try and rev all the way to 75, which will help with the gearing. The gearing's really long on this car, so it'd be nice not to have to shift. 500 something horsepower, pretty easily done. Yeah, it doesn't take a lot, and this thing has been 100% reliable. It idles good. It starts easy. It's consistent. I just put whatever 91 I find on the way up the 5. It's cheap, and that's cool. It probably makes more power on race gas, but it's plenty of power, and it's got good torque. It's nice and tractable. Really happy with the engine on the car, and it sounds insane. I mean, still, having had this car for years, the 2-3 shift in particular, it just screaming eagles.
Yeah. The one thing I wanted to ask you about, you kind of went over, but these cars are notorious for the head, the dropping valves, right?
Yeah.
In your experience, what was it like?
So the car had 20,000 miles on it when I bought it. As far as I could tell, had no history of ever being opened up. I tried not to just, go down the rabbit hole. I knew that I would eventually kind of keep building the engine, so I figured, well, I would just handle that right up front. But I can't say if it's even a real thing or not. No. I just don't know. I think every car has its, skeleton in the closet. Ooh, the boogeyman's gonna come get you. Maybe, maybe not. But these heads have worked great. No reliability issues with the car really whatsoever. Okay. For a track car, amazing.
One of the most underrated car out there, I feel.
Yeah, you can't sleep on these. Great.
What about the transmission and the diff?
Stock diff, I think it works, but I'm actually not completely sure. Traction coming out of low speed corners is pretty terrible. Now with that ABS on there, I can log each individual wheel sensor. So next time I go out, I'll see how well that's working. The diff is stock, the gearbox is stock. It does have a twin plate clutch in it from Monster, which is actually a C7 OEM twin plate clutch, but it's unsprung and so it rattles like crazy. But beyond that, very stock driveline. I did put different cooling on it. And we put the car up in the air, you could see that. And that's kind of tied to the cooling modifications in the front. Really everything from here forward, I completely rebuilt. Cooling for aero, for reliability, and that drove a lot of other adjustments with cooling the diff and the tranny, as all that's integrated factory, and I unintegrated it.
Okay. Yeah, these engines are like so compact and a huge displacement, right? For being that compact.
Yeah, it's, I'd never worked on a V8 before. I've always been more of a Japanese car guy, so EJs and Evo motors and things like that. When I did the motor stuff, I didn't have the shop. I just did this in my garage at home and was kind of shocked at how easy it was to work on. It's not very easy to get out, I'll say. The cowl covers the back half of the motor, so you really got to work to get in. Next time I drop it, I'll just drop the whole driveline out of the bottom, which will be a lot easier. I mean, doing a cam on this is so easy. It's like hilarious. It's basic.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more time on this car. The cooling stuff was the biggest piece, and then just lots of tweaking and adjustments on spring rates and alignments and driving time and finding comfort with what used to feel like a very hairy car to drive, and now actually feels pretty good. Although I'll say, embarrassingly, the last time I went to Butt Willow, on the first lap, warming up, I spun it coming out of turn 2. That's why I'm a little worried about the diff. These tires are, even though they're street tires, they're obviously very sticky. When they're cold, they are so dangerous. And I just gave it like a touch of throttle and spun off. And so as long as the tires are warm, it's pussycat. So inside it's got Sparco seats in it.
Nice.
It's got some, these are modified, oh, that's annoying. The doors are electric. All the pops are electric, so part of when I go through this will be making all that go away.
Yeah, I guess we can show the trunk real quick.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of room, very spacious back here. I pulled the carpet out, put a lightweight battery in it, but that's really all that's back here. Haven't even pulled the speakers out yet. Probably should. But.
Nice. So on the Z06, is it still all fiberglass?
This is fiberglass, yeah.
Okay.
This is aluminum. This is obviously not a factory part. The rest is, fiberglass or carbon. Car's, it's not that light. Last time I weighed it, it's about 3150 as it sits. That's without me in it. Next round, I'll try and get it well under 3K. But this still has, the carpets are out of it, but still got the dash, the AC's out, still has the heater core, still has the radio. I'm sure I'll find a bunch of weight in it. And again, like I said, these wheels, I mean, definitely need a lighter set of wheels. Oh, now we can't open the door. See? There we go. Glorious mid-2000s GM interior. It's just beautiful. Carbon fiber,
it's plastic
everywhere. I hate the interior on this car. I think the exterior design is great. Yeah, carpets are out of it. Quick release steering wheel, some kind of Delrin shift knob. Probably the worst part of this car. I love this car. I think it's great, but it has a couple shortcomings. Worse than the brakes, the factory seats are. So Sparco seats, they're on AMT mounts. I modified this one a little bit for driving position. I'll say what a lot of people like about this car is if you're a bigger dude, you can fit nicely in here. I am not a bigger dude. Visibility and pedal position and steering wheel position are not great, so that's something I want to work on. Modified the seat rails a bit to help, but now when I'm in it, my head's too far forward, so I kind of hit up here and can't get in easy. So that's a work in progress. You're fast when you're comfortable.
That's the sacrifice you have to make for looking this beautiful.
I agree. And then I got a harness bar in here. It's not great. I mean, you can see actually if you look right there that the angle of the belts is not right. Should be flat or down a bit. So this all needs some improvement. I've been kind of holding off because I'll put a cage in it in the next round.
Right.
And then it's got the factory door panels. Not much on the inside. Only gauge I added was a wideband. And then usually I've got the Garmin, forget what it's called, but the Garmin...
Catalyst?
Catalyst, yeah. Mounts right up there.
Gotcha. Now those seat mounts look really.
They're cool.
Yeah,
so
complex.
if you're, that one's not modified and it's just like way on the ground, has a good bit of room. These seats are, they make different sizes of Sparco seats. So this is a small size. So I fit great in this. My buddies, less so, but it's not for them.
Do those harnesses come with those red and blue tape?
Yeah, they did. So this side is red and blue. That side is, oh, it's also red and blue. Okay. Yeah, there's some difference down here. I bought them at separate times. But yeah, these are Sparco 2-inch, forget what the name is. I like a 2-inch harness with the Hans on particularly. It's nice. And then I ran eyelets through the floor and reinforced them for the lap belts.
Okay.
And then the shoulder belts are going into this harness bar. The harness bar mounts to basically the factory retractable seatbelt mount.
Right. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. The floorboard, you can't really put a harness thing through.
Yeah, so there's two reinforcement points that come across the bottom because they have to mount a factory seat. And so I just, tapped into that effectively. Yeah. Frame rails aren't great to go into on this version since it's aluminum. Putting a cage in this will be nice though. And then I can pull a bunch of probably weight off the top here.
Right.
Factory GM shield, it's got cracks all over it. Good track car. So this is obviously the bottom of the splitter. It's got these molded, these are 9 lives parts. I probably should have mounted them that way a bit, but this is where I put them. This is some fabulous McMaster hardware. And like I said, the subframe under here is all different. So you come back a little bit, these are the delay arms, the fancy bushings are up in here, and then these blue guys are the alignment plates for camber. And then you've got obviously a standard toe adjustment up there. And then for caster, it's also got an AMT kit up here. It's a little hard to see, but it uses those kind of fender spacer things. And so you can adjust the upper A-arm as well to dial in the camber, like fine tune it, as well as adjust the caster. So that's a nice setup. It makes it relatively easy to get it all going. Got the JRZ stuff up here. It's really tight because normally you have the leaf spring that's running over. This car was never designed to run a spring, but they make it fit. What else? Stainless brake lines. This is the lines that run to the oil cooler. These are the factory lines that run to the dry sump tank, which is up in here. Yeah. I got the 2-inch headers. I put a bunch of heat wrap on everything, like the starter and the wiring harness. If you leave it alone with these aftermarket headers on it, all that stuff burns up. And luckily, I've had no issues there. It's got not quite solid, but just about solid motor mounts on it. There's a Delrin puck between it, but there's not a lot of movement there.
I see.
And then see the exhaust. This is the mid pipe that came with these headers. It is catted. Prefer that. You don't lose any power. Doesn't stink. Makes me feel better. And then I've modified this quite a bit to be easier to service. All the exhaust systems, aftermarket exhaust systems for this car have like a slip fit, which is really easy to put together and then completely impossible to pull apart. Put some V-bands on it. And then everything here back is, I thought it'd be fun to put a GT3 style exhaust on it. So made all this over there. And then it comes back into some vibrant race mufflers. And what's interesting is it's not that loud. So it has cats, but otherwise it's 2-inch headers, 3-inch all the way back, these tiny little mufflers. And at Laguna, as it sits, it blows 102.7. Oh. So it can run a 103 day as it is. And then I also made up some Laguna pipes, as one does. And so these just slide on up here, and that drops it a bit more. So, I mean, it's incredibly loud inside and outside. When I'm at the track, if I pass my buddies, they're like, that's too much, you can't, it's scary. And it sounds cool. It needs more chop. I'll get to that with the cam. Pretty convenient place for it, easy to get to. I didn't have to cut any holes in the trunk, although I'll probably move them up later. Yeah. And then this is the tranny and diff cooler. I tried a couple different setups here. I used to have these, so factory, trans cooler is a oil to water cooler. So it runs up to the radiator and then there's a cooler built into the radiator to cool the trans. And then that comes back and there's a brick here where the diff fluid runs through that cools off the cooled tranny fluid. It's actually kind of neat from an OEM perspective. You run different fluids in the diff and the trans so they don't cross, but they're basically cooling each other. When I redid the front, I wanted the radiator to just be a radiator. So I had to put in a cooler for the diff and a cooler for the tranny. I tried initially up in the fender area here. You've got these rear brake ducts on the door, a little hard to see from your angle.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That didn't work for shit. And I think it didn't work, A, because the airflow is not great, but there's also very little space, so they were too small. And there is a pump built into the OEM diff and into the OEM tranny, but I don't think it's made to go up like that. So I found this spot here, which is below both, so it's very easy to now fill and make sure there's no air in the lines. These are 16-row Setrab coolers. They're each the same size. Amazon, like $20 fans on it,
Yes.
running on a temp switch, and then they're mounted with these aluminum rods up into, those are actually factory for the, I think, that heat shield.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this works great. So finally, this works. The fans, I think, probably do more of it. Articulated the suspension to make sure that the sway bar won't hit it, which it won't. And so basically have a giant bash bar in front of them. It's a little sketch to kind of have them hanging in space here, but it's clean. And for now, it works. I think in the future, I might do like what they did on the C6R and stuff and move this up to the, kind of up in the trunk area. But for now, this is sufficient. This is where the seat anchors are.
Oh, okay.
So this piece here is aluminum. This is the wood, or fiberglass, or whatever it is. This is aluminum, and then these guys are the factory anchor points for the seats.
Gotcha.
So I just kind of came down through here, made it work, try to keep as much clearance as possible. Z06 has all magnesium subframes, which are...
So are you monitoring the temperature with the trans and diff?
So it's just got a 180-degree thermostat switch on it, and that switch flips a relay that turns the fans on.
Okay.
I didn't want to add another gauge because eventually this will have a proper digital dash in it. So this is the sort of hacky temporary version. But I can't log the diff temp, but I can log the tranny temp through just the OEM diagnostics.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so when factory, it'd get up to like 250, 260.
That's hot.
With the first version up in here, it'd get up to almost 300. That's why I ripped that out. And then with this, it just sits at like 220 all day. So I don't know what the diff is, but I imagine it's similar or better. This seems to work really well. Like I said, I think the fans are doing most of the work, but I don't actually know. And once I get proper data logging and stuff on the car, I'll figure it out. And maybe I can move these somewhere a little more out of the way. Although I will say it looks cool.
Yeah.
So this is my favorite part of this whole build. It's the front end.
Yeah.
I think made a multi-second difference, although I can't quite prove it. Car ran 52s, factory style cooling, and factory aero. And then really the only other change since has been the aero. So the splitter, all the cooling adjustments up here, which are very aero focused in the rear wing, and then it dropped to 48. Some of that's definitely driving, some of that's definitely balls, but this had a lot to do with it. The front end balance is good. So what's going on here is the splitter's still attached. What it's attached to is this aluminum frame. It's made out of 1-inch box aluminum. I think it's 1/8 inch thick. It might be quarter, I don't quite remember. And this bolts up to where the factory front subframe bolted. And the purpose of all this is obviously it's integrated support for the splitter, but it also let me take the radiator and tilt it, I would call this the right way, but basically tilt it backwards. So the way that C5s and C6 vets come is the radiator is tilted back at 45 degrees.
Right.
And what that means is that when the air comes in through the radiator, it all exits under the car, which for aero is heinous. On the C7, they went to the backwards way. So this is actually a DeWitt's C7 race radiator.
Gotcha.
And that's also supported by this same subframe. This is the air intake. So the car is running a factory ECU, but converted to speed density, no mass airflow. And then this runs, you can see the big honking pipe kind of down into here. And then these are Setrab oil coolers. And then these are mounted on their own ducted kind of half-ass. I sort of ran out of time when I built all this. This was all built at my friend's garage. And I had a great time building it, but part of the reason I have this shop now is I was like, I can't keep driving to the valley to build this stuff. Fabricated over the course of a couple weeks. I haven't touched it since I built it, I think nearly 2 years ago now. There's some improvements I'd like to make. I think the ducting, frankly, is a little underwhelming, but everything else I'm pretty happy with. And then one of the funny details of this is if you see this weld here, which actually doesn't look that bad, I painstakingly bent these things to not have any welds on it because, let's make it hard. And then when I went to put them on the car, I realized that I had bent these tabs backwards. So I had to cut them off and then weld it together, but the welds look good, so it's fine. Yeah, and then so with this, huge change also in operating temperature. I never see water temps kind of get past like 210, even on hot days. I don't see oil tempers go past like 245. And I think, in keeping with the idea of, I was talking to you about this earlier before on camera, like I want the car to be fast, but I also don't want problems. This is for fun. If I go to the track, I want to be able to run at the track and not be stressing or fixing things, et cetera. That's what the shop is for. And so this is probably way overkill, but it's part of why I never have to worry about it overheating. And from a performance perspective, it seems to have worked really well. I'm reusing most of the factory attachment points, although I use a lot less of them than what was originally there. And then things like the fender liners are modified to sort of fit past, but it's a lot of screws, but it's not hard. And so it kind of fits my sort of serviceability requirements. In the future, it'd be good to make it a little more quick disconnect. It's always tricky figuring out how to mount a splitter in a way that's reliable and also easy to come on and off.
Yeah, so a couple questions for you, Dan. Boxer engine versus V8?
Boxer.
Boxer. Rear engine versus front engine?
I mean, I like this. This is fine.
I guess the ultimate question is 997 GT3 versus Corvette Z06.
Z06, all the way.
Yeah.
All the way. This is more than the sum of its parts. This is a very fun, very loud, engaging kind of car.
Okay. So if you were to go back and choose your car again, would you choose the same car?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm totally happy with this. I miss the GT3 sometimes, I think mostly because it's appreciated so much since I sold it.
Yeah.
But for what I want to do, this is just a way better platform.
Okay. This is the ultimate track car for you.
This is the ultimate track car for me. I think if I was just given a track car, I'd probably take a cup car over this, but that's not, I like building this more than I like driving it. But I wouldn't turn down a drive in a, very built out Porsche. That'd be a lot of fun.
Any shout outs?
Shout out to my wife, putting up for me. All my buddies who, help me bleed brakes and tires and all that kind of stuff. Jeff at AP Racing, Frank at JRZ. That's the crew.
Okay. Any last thing you want to say?
Don't sleep on these. This is like the greatest track car. It's fun seeing more of them now at the track, so they're getting a bit more popular, but these are amazing to modify. The whole New Balance thing is overrated. Although I still sheepishly think these are not New Balance. It's still funny to me that I own a red Corvette, but I love this car.
Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, pleasure.
Yeah, lovely shop, and good luck with hunting for that low 40s.
It's gonna happen. Get there.
All right, thank you.